In our headlines on this Wednesday, April 2nd, here in South Korea. Come Friday, the Constitutional Court announces its verdict on the fate of President Yoon Suk-yeol that will either reinstate him or remove him from the top office. And ahead of Friday's critical ruling, acting President Han Duck-soo is calling on political parties to refrain from statements that may serve to instigate public division and disorder. Meanwhile, over in the US, the Trump administration prepares to announce its reciprocal tariffs on all its trade partners on Tuesday, US time, amid concerns over their broader impact on global trade.
결연한 구국의 의지로 비상계엄을 선포하였습니다.
The date for the Constitutional Court's decision on President Yoon Suk-yeol's political fate following his brief imposition of martial law has been set. So what can we expect on Friday? Our Oh Soo-young walks us through the formalities that may unfold on that day.
President Yoon Suk-yeol's removal or return to power will take effect the moment his fate is stated aloud by the Constitutional Court bench on Friday. Set to be broadcast live at 11 a.m, the nation will be reading the lips of Justice Chung Yong-sik, who as the presiding judge on the case will deliver the decision by the 8-member bench. The ruling will come 111 days after the National Assembly's impeachment vote last December, following the president's martial law order. The bench's deliberation is the longest ever for a presidential case, as the ruling will be delivered 38 days after Yoon's final trial hearing in February.
While sources say the justices have reached an understanding on the verdict and even scheduled a meeting for Wednesday, most likely to discuss procedural matters, the bench is likely to sign off on that decision at the very last minute to maintain utmost confidentiality. In the case of former President Park Geun-hye in 2017, the justices arrived early in the morning of the ruling in order to finalise their decision.
If the same procedure is followed, the lead justice for the case, Chung Yong-sik, will present his opinion first, followed by other justices in reverse order of their appointments to the court. Once they establish a consensus, the bench will conduct a final review of the written judgment, collect signatures and seal the ruling. When entering the courtroom to deliver their decision, the justices will take their seats in the order of seniority, with Acting Chief Justice Moon Young-bae at the centre to declare a start to the proceedings. Typically, if there has been a unanimous decision, the lead justice explains the rationale for the ruling first, followed by the main decision. If there are dissenting or various concurring opinions, the main decision is usually read first, followed by explanations from individual justices representing differing views. Prime Minister Han Duck-soo's impeachment trial was also concluded with the bench first declaring the case dismissed before revealing various opinions. However, as the order of delivery is at the court's discretion, the style of the proceedings could vary. If the court upholds the impeachment, with the consent of at least 6 justices, President Yoon will be removed from office. If the case is dismissed or rejected on procedural grounds by 3 or more members of the bench, he will return to his duties. While previous presidents did not attend their ruling session, President Yoon may choose to show up in the courtroom, as he's done for his hearings throughout the trial. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
And as Korea awaits the Constitutional Court's verdict on President Yoon Suk-yeol's fate, acting President Han Duck-soo has highlighted the importance of peacefully accepting the court's ruling while renewing calls on political parties against statements that may instigate division and disorder. Our Kim Do-yeon has details.
With the Constitutional Court's landmark decision on President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment just days away, the government is on high alert, prioritizing citizen safety, as thousands of protesters from both sides are expected to fill the streets. Acting President and Prime Minister Han Duck-soo on Wednesday presided over a meeting with safety-related ministers and Seoul Mayor Oh Se-hoon, and emphasized unity over division while calling on politicians to act responsibly.
I also urge politicians, now is the time to prioritize the stability and survival of our community above political interests. Please demonstrate a responsible stance that promotes social unity rather than division and conflict. In particular, I earnestly ask you to refrain from making remarks that may incite or provoke illegal protests and violence.
Seoul Mayor also laid out the city government's plan to keep safety and order. It's set to deploy 2,400 personnel across the city's mass gathering sites to oversee safety. Public transport will be run according to the situation except for Anguk Station on Line 3, which will be closed on the day of the verdict. Buses are set to take detours while certain key metro stations such as Yeouido and Gwanghwamun will be closely monitored to operate according to the crowd situation.
Honourable citizens, the Seoul Metropolitan Government deeply respects everyone's right to express their opinion. At the same time, we reiterate that safeguarding a safe and peaceful daily life for our citizens is also a precious value that must be protected.
The police and relevant ministries have also laid out their plans. Starting at 9 a.m. on April 3rd, the police agency will be on emergency duty. Starting at midnight on April 4th, 100% of its available officers will be deployed to assigned positions. The Safety Ministry will be in charge of the safety adjustments overall, while the Ministry of Science and ICT will be in charge of stationing additional mobile-based stations so citizens' phone services aren't disrupted due to large gatherings. The government's alertness comes with good reason. Protesters for both sides have been gathering with intensity mounting as polarized views clash in close areas. Most recently, there was an attack at a local court in Seoul where supporters of Yoon raided the building, vandalized it, and used violence against authorities. Back in 2017, after the last presidential impeachment verdict, when President Park Geun-hye's impeachment was upheld, her supporters caused riots charging toward the police. This left 4 people dead. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok has pledged tangible support for agricultural areas affected by the worst wildfires in the nation's history. Speaking at an economic ministerial meeting earlier on this Wednesday, Choi added the support will seek to stabilize the supply and prices of agricultural products and assist farmers affected by the recent fires. At least 400 billion Korean won, or some $273 million will be allocated for the restoration of equipment and facilities, the purchase of livestock feed, and emergency livelihood relief. Now, separately, the death toll from last week's devastating fires has risen to 31, with another fatality reported today. In other news, the Trump administration is poised to make public its reciprocal tariffs on Tuesday local time at the White House. Our correspondent Lee Soo-jin reports.
U.S. President Donald Trump's pending tariffs will go into effect immediately after they are announced, according to a White House spokesperson on Tuesday local time.
My understanding is that the tariff announcement will come tomorrow. They will be effective immediately. He's with his trade and tariff team right now, perfecting it to make sure this is a perfect deal for the American people and the American worker.
The tariffs are set to be announced by Trump at a Rose Garden ceremony at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on April 2nd, which is 5 a.m. on the 3rd here in Korea. He has repeatedly touted April 2nd as Liberation Day, as he believes that his policies will free American industries from what he calls unfair trade practices. And according to U.S. media outlets, including the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, the Trump administration is considering various tariff strategies. One is imposing a 20% flat tariff on all imports. Another is assigning each country a reciprocal tariff number that corresponds to tariffs and other trade barriers on U.S. products. And the U.S. Trade Representative is also considering a third option where levies, likely to be lower than the universal 20%, would be imposed on a wide range of imports from select countries. For South Korea, these tariffs are expected to add further pressure as they come amid a wave of other tariffs, such as the 25% auto tariff set to go into effect on April 2nd and collected the following day. And just last month, the Trump administration imposed sweeping 25% tariffs on aluminum and steel. But despite the country's leadership vacuum, the Korean government is holding various emergency meetings to come up with response measures. Acting President Han Duck-soo on Tuesday, along with the industry, finance, and foreign ministers, met with heads of Korea's top 4 conglomerates, Samsung Electronics, Hyundai Motor, SK, and LG, where Han pledged to continue high-level U.S. outreach and to work with the private sector to respond to the challenges posed by the tariffs. 이수진, 아리랑 뉴스.
Inflation here in South Korea in March remained within the 2% range for the third month in a row. Our Park Chun-han covers this latest finding and more.
South Korea's consumer price data shows steady inflation in the low 2% range over the past 3 months. In March, consumer prices increased by 2.1% compared to March the previous year. The inflation over the past 3 months is slightly higher than September to December last year, when inflation was in the 1% range. The price of cabbages went up by 49.7%, and radishes went up by 86.4%. The price of processed foods rose by 3.6%. That's the biggest jump in 15 months, pushing overall inflation up by 0.3 percentage points. Statistics Korea attributed the increase in processed food prices to 3 factors: a rise in raw material prices, the high foreign exchange rate, and rising labor and energy costs. Meanwhile, the cost of services also went up, with both public and personal services seeing price rises. The price of public services, which include things like transport and tuition fees, increased by 1.4% year-on-year. The increase was mainly due to the rise in private university tuition. The price of personal services is 3.1% higher than a year ago. The increase was due to increased demand in trips in March. Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok pledged at the ministerial meeting on economic affairs to use the government's full range of capabilities to stabilize perceived inflation.
In April and May, we will allocate an additional 30 billion Korean won to support agricultural product discounts, and we will supply more than 100 tons of cabbages and radishes to the market every day to stabilize supply and demand. We will also lower the price burden of food ingredients through new quota tariffs on raw pork meat and processed egg products.
The Bank of Korea on Wednesday said that the inflation rate is expected to remain stable around the target level of 2%. It also added that there is still a lot of uncertainty around the foreign exchange rate and oil price movements, as well as domestic demand. The central bank said it will keep a keen eye on future inflation levels. 박준환, 아리랑 뉴스.
Hyundai Motor and its affiliate Kia Motors set new records in sales for the month of March in the U.S. market. According to the latest company data, the two car makers combined sold some 170,000 units last month, up about 13% on year. Now, this is reportedly the highest ever March sales and also marks the 6th straight month of growth. This latest performance is being linked to stellar sales of eco-friendly vehicles. International relief agencies are ramping up their efforts to aid Myanmar after a devastating earthquake that has left the country striving to come to terms with the extent of the damage and loss. Our foreign affairs correspondent Pei Eun-ji reports.
Homes are destroyed and lives are lost in Myanmar after the country was hit by its largest earthquake in more than a century. The death toll has already exceeded 2,700. Despite the efforts of rescuers desperately searching for survivors. International organizations are rushing to help, as residents in hardest-hit regions are in urgent need of shelter and essential items such as clean water, food, and hygiene kits. A representative of the UN Refugee Agency in Myanmar, based in Yangon, said the latest earthquake is a crisis on top of a crisis, as the country already had more than 3 million people displaced from the ongoing armed conflict, even before the earthquake.
And this area, particular area of north and central and northwestern part of Myanmar, it was already the home of 1.6 million IDPs, internally displaced people. On the top of that, we do think that almost 50 million people have been affected by this earthquake, and among which 3.8 million, which is quite a devastating number, 3.8 million people are considered to be living in the area that was hardest hit by the earthquake. So the impact, you can imagine, is quite enormous.
The country director for Solidaritas International, a France-based NGO who's also in Yangon, said local responders are starting to get exhausted and that they're running out of resources. He highlighted that the situation is at a turning point, adding that efficient collaboration between local teams and international organizations is crucial in order to gather all available resources.
Mostly, we are going to support local responders when it comes to displacement sites for people that have been evacuating the city of Mandalay because of fear of building continuing to collapse and being affected. We know already that quite a lot of people have now been spending 3 nights out in the streets with no shelter, with no immediate protection. So that's
With hospitals, schools, and public infrastructure now destroyed, there are concerns not only with regard to basic needs, but also healthcare and the educational system. The vice president of the International Rescue Committee said teams have been sent to a town near the epicenter of the earthquake, where 80% of the buildings have been compromised, and explained that the impact of an earthquake can last years.
It's been heartening to see the response that's been mounted so far, but we know this is going to be an effort that's going to take not weeks but months, possibly years, to fully recover from a crisis like this.
As the devastated country struggles to cope with the aftermath of the powerful earthquake, local communities are still awaiting international aid and support. Peunji, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, over in the U.S., a 3-star general officer tapped for a key military post has reaffirmed concerns over North Korea's nuclear weapons capabilities. Our Lee Seung-jae has the latest.
During a Senate confirmation hearing on Tuesday, top U.S. general nominee John Cain called North Korea's nuclear and missile programs an immediate security challenge. The retired Air Force Lieutenant General, who has been chosen by U.S. President Donald Trump to be the next chief of U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, raised the concerns in a written statement submitted in advance to the Senate Armed Services Committee. Cain said if confirmed, he would assess the U.S. military presence in South Korea and Japan and make recommendations to the Secretary of Defense and the U.S. President. The nominee also stressed that North Korea's nuclear, missile, and cyber capabilities continue to threaten not just the U.S., but its allies on a global scale. Cain also expressed support for trilateral security cooperation between the U.S., South Korea, and Japan. He vowed to continue advocating the use of the trilateral security cooperation framework as a blueprint for military cooperation if confirmed. The framework was signed by the defense chiefs of Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo last July, which was seen as a move to formalize their trilateral security cooperation. The top U.S. general nominee also raised concerns that North Korea's cooperation with Russia may provide an opportunity for Pyongyang to improve its missile capabilities. He says the regime had provided ballistic missiles to Russia that were used against Ukraine, marking the first time North Korean missile systems have been used in actual combat. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And North Korea has witnessed more than 5,000 casualties as of March amid its support of Russian aggression against Ukraine. Now, this is according to the British Defense Ministry in a recent intelligence assessment that adds a third of the casualties died while in active combat missions on the ground against Ukrainian troops in Russia's Kursk region. This latest number of casualties indicate that North Korea has lost roughly half of its initial deployment of 11,000 soldiers to Russia. On a light note now, Korea is ushering in the sights and sounds of spring. That being said, our Ian sheds light on a flower festival to better celebrate this particular season.
The Bucheon Azalea Festival is blooming. The vibrant pink azaleas have people soaking up the spring vibes. Bucheon City, not too far from Seoul, is hosting this beautiful festival at Bucheon Stadium and Wonmisan Mountain or Wonmisan Azalea Hill. The trails around Wonmisan Azalea Hill offer a great opportunity to enjoy both the stunning azalea blossoms and the natural beauty of the landscape while hiking. It's a perfect way to soak in the scenery and get some fresh air.
I visit every year. Taking in the scenery brings me a sense of peace. Now, at 72, I find myself reflecting on the beauty of life and the passing of time.
It was my first time to come and to see these beautiful flowers, and I came to see the azalea blossom, and then I roamed around and saw lots of beautiful flowers, and then I found out the market which was nearby, and there I enjoyed the food and all these. It was crowded, but if you want to have beautiful aesthetic photos for your Instagram or social media, I recommend you to visit here. Yeah.
A key goal of the festival is to boost the local economy by hosting a variety of events and activities, such as making custom azalea-themed bags.
The Azalea Festival is timed to coincide with the spring bloom, transforming open spaces at Bucheon Stadium into interactive attractions. To promote cultural tourism and support the local economy, the festival features a flea market with local artists, small business product sales, and a variety of food trucks.
Many other spring blossom festivals across South Korea are still running. Other major festivals include the Daegu E-World Blossom Picnic, Taean Tulip Festival, Jinhae Gunangje Festival, and Koksong World Rose Festival. The Bucheon Azalea Festival will run until April 6th. However, music performances have been cancelled as a mark of respect for those affected by the recent tragic wildfires in Gyeongsangbuk-do province. Spring is here, but so are heartbreaking losses. 이은희, 아리랑 뉴스.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has visited Moscow, meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin and Foreign Affairs Minister Sergei Lavrov to discuss bilateral relations and international issues. During his three-day visit, Wang Yi stated on Tuesday local time that both nations are friends forever, never enemies, emphasizing the enduring friendship between China and Russia. President Putin underscored the high level of Russia-China relations, calling for the consistent enhancement of strategic cooperation. Wang also expressed China's readiness to play a constructive role in resolving the Ukraine conflict. It was also confirmed that Chinese President Xi Jinping would visit Moscow for the Victory Parade in May, commemorating the 80th anniversary of the Soviet Union's victory over Nazi Germany. Ukraine has announced it plans to work with the United States to develop a mutually acceptable minerals agreement, aiming to bolster economic ties and support Ukraine's reconstruction efforts. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha stated on Tuesday local time that Kyiv is working with the U.S. to refine a minerals deal that would see more American business involvement in Ukraine and contribute to the nation's security infrastructure. The latest U.S. proposal suggests that Ukraine allocate all profits from a fund controlling its resources to repay American wartime aid with interest. President Volodymyr Zelensky has expressed caution, emphasizing the need for a thorough review before proceeding. Meanwhile, Germany's foreign minister said during a visit to Kyiv on Tuesday that any minerals agreement between Ukraine and the U.S. must comply with European Union legislation. In the United States, the Department of Health and Human Services initiated significant layoffs on Tuesday local time, affecting approximately 10,000 employees. This affected workers across various agencies, including the Food and Drug Administration, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and the National Institutes of Health. The action is part of a broader restructuring plan led by Health Secretary Robert Kennedy Jr., aiming to consolidate 28 divisions into 15 to potentially save taxpayers $1.3 billion annually. Despite concerns about the nation's capacity to manage health emergencies, Kennedy said the reorganization will enhance efficiency within the department. 최지희, 아리랑 뉴스.
From the afternoon, light spring rain has been falling across the country, starting with the Seoul metropolitan area and the west coast of Chungcheongnam-do province during the day. It has spread to other parts of Chungcheongdo provinces, western parts of Gangwon-do province, and northern parts of Jeollabuk-do province. But it's mostly going to stop tonight. This spring rain is not enough to relieve the dusty air. Seoul, Incheon, southern parts of Gyeonggi-do province, Chungcheongnam-do province, and Jeollabuk-do province will have bad levels of ultrafine dust tomorrow. Tomorrow morning will be mild with Seoul, Gwangju, and Daegu at 6 degrees Celsius. Daily highs will move up to 14 to 17 degrees all over the country. Typical spring conditions with huge daily temperature gaps will continue for the time being. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Right, those are the top stories at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session. Do stay with us and thank you for now.